because Pastor asked me to speak a little bit last minute, not really last minute, just a little last minute for myself. But I was excited because he got me. I prayed, as soon as he asked me, I prayed, okay, God, give me a message, I don't want to freak out, just give it to me already. And he gave it to me. There was a few words that we talked about during our last mini church that popped my brain. So he gave me a message, he gave me a title, and he actually gave me some points. So I was excited. And then I freaked out because I realized that he only gave me a little bit, he gave me a lot. But I was super excited. We had a great mini church. And mini church just got me excited again. It's always great to be around our brothers and sisters who just want to serve the Lord and who are real about it. You know, I just love that. So today's message is not up there. We're going to go through, but we're going to look at Daniel 3. And the title of the message, it's called Fireproof. Sorry guys, I don't have a lot of notes here. I have a lot of heart surgery God though. So hopefully I can go and give you guys a glance of what told me. So Daniel 3. The title of this is The Image of Gold and the Blazing Furnace. Anybody understand that when I read it? You know what we're talking about yet? Yeah? We're talking about these three guys. Their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah? It's so funny. I've read the Bible before, and I guess it's been stuck in my brain the way it's been said to myself, I guess. And I always say Abednego as Abednego. Yeah. I always say it wrong. And then I read it, I'm not saying Abednego, I'm saying a different word. So it was pretty cool just to read it again and realize I was saying his name wrong. And obviously if you read about them, you know that they have a few different names. But anyway, it's about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they basically, there's a king, right, called King Nebuchadnezzar. And he builds this, this statue of gold. Right? It's about, they say it's about our size, what is 90 feet tall, about 9 feet wide, a statue of gold. And he tells his people, he calls all his, what they call them, precepts, satraps, whatever, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provisional officials to come to this dedication of this statue. So they all these high up guys in this Babylon, right? Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. They all come and to this dedication. They all come to this dedication of this statue. And the king announces to them that there's one thing that they need to do with this statue. And he says, whenever you hear music, right? He says, harps, lyres, or as I say, I think, zithers, and all this music. He said, when you hear the music, you guys are commanded to bow down in front of this statue. And if not, there's a consequence. And if you know the story, the consequence is what? Being thrown into this blazing furnace. So they all understand what's happening, what they're supposed to be doing. So they play the music and they bow down, right? And then, let's see. And then we go, so we're start off at Daniel 3, verse 8. At this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. Basically, my head talks smack, right? They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "May the king live forever. Your Majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold. And that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you. Your Majesty, they neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up." Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace, then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Pause for a second. It's pretty. If you know the story, there's things before. We should always do this. Pastor always says, if you pick out a scripture, some of us do this old school style where we pray, Lord, give me something, we open the book, right? Point. And sometimes it doesn't say anything special. So what does Pastor always say? That we should always read stuff before and after to get the context of what we're reading, right? So we take the time to read before this, we can learn the context of what's really happening in the story. It's pretty crazy that King Nebuchadnezzar says that then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand. When we go to the beginning of Daniel, which I recommend everybody read Daniel 1, 2, and 3, and share that in the church, please. I to get a better vision of this. But in chapter 1, he basically, or in those 2 chapters, King Nebuchadnezzar is shown who God is. I mean, there's things that happen with Daniel, dreams and all this stuff that Nebuchadnezzar knows who God is. He's not ignorant to God, he knows God. So I just found it interesting that he still says, after all those crazy things that happened to him, that what God will save you when I decide to throw you into this furnace for not falling down. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards him changed. His attitude changed because when you read about them before, they found favor, Daniel mostly, right? Found favor in the king. So when I'm reading this, I'm reading him talking nicely to them. Like he's trying to make sure that they hear what he said and then they bow down. And then they just blatantly say, no, we're not doing this, so he gets angry, right? So Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Which is pretty crazy, right? That the guys who's not even going into the fire gets taken up and into the fire, right? And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw them into the fire? They replied, certainly, your majesty. He said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like the son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was the hair on their heads singed, their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. So I read this story. I'm asking God to show me what the message is going to be. At Mini Church, we briefly mentioned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Not like a full story, just I forget why it was mentioned, because their name was mentioned, so I guess that's why I popped my brain. So I'm reading this, and there's so much things in this thing that you can take and preach about. There's just so much things that it's hard to keep focus on one thing because there's so much. So I'm going through these things, and at first I was thinking, okay, so it's just a story about how we go through our stuff and we gotta be firm and believe in God and all these things, right? The basic moral of this story. But what God does is God intrigues my brain, and I read it before, but it says that they saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was the hair of their heads singed, their robes not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. As my brain was rattled, how can these guys, besides God's stuff, right? How can anybody be touched by fire and not be affected by it? Fire changes everything. I put a lighter to anything in here, something will happen. Even if it's metal, it might take longer, it might be a higher heat, but it will be affected by fire. But these guys were thrown into a furnace by other guys who didn't even survive carrying them into the furnace, right? Thrown into there, walked around, right? Nothing is happening. Stepped out of the fire, right? And then, like I said, not affected. Their hair not singed, right? If everybody knows this, you put your hair too close to any kind of flame or heat, what happens? Right? Nothing happened to them, yeah? And so I'm saying to the Lord, like, how is there anything in this world that doesn't need your help to become like that? And he gave me one word. Anybody know what that word is? Right? Fireproof, right? In order for something to be undamaged by fire, it has to be made fireproof. So I'm sitting there, I'm going through all these things, right? And just, like for myself, I'm just freaking out. So I'm praying, hey Lord, so what is it then? What did Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do so well that you decided to show up when they needed you? What did they do that allowed you to come and make them fireproof? Yeah? And I pondered and pondered, and I read some stuff. They have 3 gems that I want to talk about. Small, fast gems that's nothing special, but it says right here, right in the next verses, right? So there was no smell, they weren't affected by the fire. Verse 28, then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. First gem, they trusted in him. Right? First gem, they trusted. If you look back at Daniel, so please write this down. There's no PowerPoint, guys. So write this down. Daniel 3, verses 16 and 17. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into this blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it. And he will deliver us from it. He will deliver us from your majesty's hand. Plain and simple, right? They trusted God. They knew who their God was, and they trusted him. The next point, or gem, if you want to say, is they defied the king. Verse 29, or continuing on that verse, right? They trusted him and defied the king's command. If you take that one and you look at, well, just look, I'm not going to go give you a bang. First off, when they're talking to him, does that even sound like a way that you talk to a king? Right? He says, first off, they don't bow. Right? He says, this is my decree, this is what I say, bow down to the statue. They defied the king and they didn't bow down. The way, when I read this, the way they're talking to him doesn't seem like the way you should be talking to a king, right? It's like, if you read the story about Xerxes and Esther, right? You enter, you do all these things just for the king to even look at you for anything. These guys were just speaking out of turn, if you want, yeah? In my brain, I think that they knew their God so well that, it might sound wrong, that they didn't respect the king anyway, right? That they just came to defy the king. What I found interesting, okay, guys, this is not anything special, it's something that I just found interesting. If you read before chapter 3, let's just say chapter 2, verse 48, it says, then the king placed Daniel in a high position and lavished many gifts on him. He made him ruler over the entire province of Babylon and placed him in charge of all its wise men. Moreover, at Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego administrators over the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court. This is how my brain works. I don't know if I misinterpret what they're saying, but it's how my brain works. And either way, the outcome is the same. I just thought it was an interesting fact. In the beginning of chapter 3, it says that King Nebuchadnezzar builds this huge statue on the flatlands of Dura, right, in Babylon. And then he summons the satraps, prefects, governors. He summons all these officials to show up, right? I read these things over and over. I searched over and over. I watched new videos and old videos and movies that was made, trying to figure out what their concept of what's happening here. We just read that he made Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego advisors over the province of Babylon, right? So is that a pretty high position or a low position? It's a pretty high position. And then in chapter 3, he calls all those high position guys to come over there. The way I'm reading this, sounds like they never showed up. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like when he set up this statue and told everybody to bow down, that they weren't there, right? It doesn't mention their names. The way I read it, seems like time has passed and the astrologers noticed that these guys don't worship your statue or your God, right? That's how I read it. So for me it was, by reading that, once again, they defied the king. That's what I'm trying to say. That they didn't even go there. They didn't even try to even worry about it, right? Not saying that's what happened, right? On the opposite end, they went, right? It's possible that they did show up there and they just didn't bow in front of him at that moment. Either way, I don't know. Either way, it's a defiance, right? I just thought it was an interesting fact to see what might have been going with these guys and going through their minds, right? So they defied the king. The third gem that I felt like God gave me that would make them fireproof was, if you continue, they say that they defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Sorry. If you take a look at Daniel 3, verse 18, it says, but even if he does not, right, they're saying that our God is going to save us from your hand, right? You can throw us in the furnace all you want, nothing's going to happen. And then they say, but even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. I don't know about you, but that's crazy to me. Like, that's like, I was going to say it wrong, not a bad word, it's a wrong word. It's crazy that they just keep defying this king. And they say, like, we trust our God, we know our God, He will save us from this place, from this furnace that you're going to put us in, because we're not bowing down to your statue. But just so you know, that even if I knew He wasn't going to save me, I still wouldn't bow down to your statue. I still will not bow down to you. And I just found that just amazing, So I'm sitting there and I'm excited, right? You say, going through all these things, whatever. Then I realized something. These aren't gems on how to become fireproof. Yeah? These are gems, or, how do you say this? These are the results, or the way people act when they're already fireproof. Yeah, you're not going to go and defy the king and that will make you fireproof. You do that because you are fireproof. I don't know if that makes sense or not, yeah? I feel like I went so much faster than I supposed to be going. So I'm praying about this, and I'm like, Lord, what do you mean, like, these aren't gems? And I felt like God gave me this weird, God always tells me weird things, my brain is just weird. And I felt like God said, gems are cool, but not for this message. These gems and points are cool, but when I give you a gem, what do? Ooh, wow, I didn't see that before, right? And gems are pretty and they're nice and hopefully you remember them, you take them with you, but that's what they are, right? Just oohs and ahs to a point. So I felt like God told me that is not what I want. That is not gems that I want to be talking about. But what I want to give you, I want you to tell them is give them one application. One thing that you need to apply to become fireproof, right? To position, I like when Pastor says that word, position yourself to become fireproof. Because we can say that, oh, if I do this one thing, that I will become fireproof. You're not fireproof. Physically, spiritually, whatever, you're not fireproof. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not fireproof. God's fireproof. Yeah? He is the one. So position yourself. This one thing will help you position yourself, or will position yourself in a way that you allow God to put fireproof, I don't know the word, fireproofness upon you. Yeah? We understand where we're going so far in this? The one application. Oh yeah, I'm going way more faster than really quick. Anyway. The one application. Write this down turn to Daniel 1. Daniel chapter 1. And I'm going to read this story. Daniel's training in Babylon. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. So we have the king of Babylon and the king of Judah, right? And they have a battle. Nebuchadnezzar takes over Judah, right? So now he is the king, if you want me. The Lord delivered Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hands, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylonia, and put in the treasure house of his God. So obviously, King Nebuchadnezzar does not believe in God, right? He's not a godly man, God-fearing man, like that. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of the court officials, to bring into the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and the nobility. Young men without any physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and the literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them a daily amount of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. Among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, I'm going to say it wrong, makes me sound so dirty, but Mishael, sounds a little better, sorry guys, and Azariah. The chief official gave them new names. To Daniel, the name Belshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. So far, it's just basically saying that the king took over this place. Took a bunch of these young, smart, handsome, good guys, right? And took them to learn stuff, right? Trained them up in his ways and in his gods and his religion and his style and his stuff, right? And then after they're done training, to serve him, right? To work in his court. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine. And he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. Now God had caused the official to show favor and compassion to Daniel. But the official told Daniel, I'm afraid of my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men here? The king would then have my head because of you. Daniel then said to the guard whom the chief official had appointed over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat, water to drink, then compare our appearance with what the young men who eat the royal food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see. So he's basically saying, give us 10 days, let us eat the food we're supposed to be eating instead of this other food. And in those 10 days, judge what we look like and feel like versus these other guys, and then make a decision if you want to continue doing this or not. So he agreed to this and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, they looked healthier and better nourished than any of the other young men who ate the royal food. So the guard took away the choice food and the wine they were to drink and gave them vegetables instead. To these four young men, God gave knowledge and understanding and all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. At the end of the time set by the king to bring them into his service, the chief official presented them to Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and he found none equal to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the king's service. In every matter of wisdom, understanding about which is the king's question. In every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found them 10 times better than all the other magicians and enchanters in the whole kingdom. And Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. Sorry, all that talking. The application, that one application you write down, goes like this. If you know this, then awesome, don't try it out. If you don't know this, then just continue to listen. N-O-T-W. Yeah? That's your application. N-O-T-W. The king, who didn't believe in God, right, overtook this place, took these 4 young men, and placed them in his world. Yeah? Before I go forward, because I want to forget this. When we talk about the fire that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was in, we can also take that literal fire and place it into this concept of the world we live in. Yeah? Not only in trials and tribulations, but in the physical world that we live in today. So the king took these people out of their world and placed them in his world. And then taught them all of his stuff, his ways, and things he's supposed to be doing, the food he wants to eat, the things he wants to drink. And they, from the beginning, Daniel said no, right? Daniel said, this is what I want to do, right? Test me and the others out. I don't think that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were on the same level as Daniel. I think Daniel was the one who said, I'm not doing this, right? The reason why, I'm not too sure. I searched, when I was younger, I heard somebody tell me that was because it was Passover. I don't know the date, so I can't tell you that. But reading stuff about Daniel, if they were smart young men, I'm pretty sure that if they were going to learn all these things in this new culture, they knew all the other things, or a lot of the other things from their old culture. That they knew who God was. They knew God's law. They knew what God called them to do and how they're supposed to live. So my assumption is that if the king is going to eat meat, he's not going to just eat one kind of meat. He's going to eat multiple types of meat. And if you know the Jewish people, you know the people, right, God's people, they didn't eat all kinds of meat, right? I might be wrong, right? Anything that was cold, he's allowed to eat, right? And anything that wasn't cold, right, they weren't. So I'm pretty sure that they were eating cakes in the king's stuff, right? And Daniel's like, oh, I'm not supposed to be eating that, right? Or I'm not supposed to be drinking wine because that's just not good. So I'm pretty sure that's how it was. So he took his world and said, I'm not changing my world in this sense. I'm not giving up this, but this is important. Test me. Don't give me meat. Don't give me wine. Give me water and give me vegetables. And then in his brain, then the Lord will show you how it's supposed to be. So NOTW, Gerald. What does that stand for? I'm sorry, people might not know. How do you know? Oh, you know. Anybody here does not know what NOTW stands for? Raise your hand. Don't know. Anybody seen it before? Who doesn't know it? Seen it? Like a sticker, it's closed. Kahel, what does it stand for?
Not of this world.
Not of this world. That's the application, is to remember that you are not from this world. Yeah? you take this application and you apply it into your life today, and I guarantee you that God will make it fireproof. Why? Because you abide in His ways and His things and His callings. Exactly what they did. Right? You can go on about all this other stuff, on what they did and all these other things, but we need to become fireproof people. And we need to remember, the application is to remember this, that you're not from here. You don't belong here. So all the other things that they enjoy here, you're not supposed to enjoy. Now, it's not a message about you better do the right things, stay away from this, stay away from that. It's a message that's telling you the truth of you act better, you be better. You know, for a long time, only now I'm better at it, not perfect, better at it. For a long time, when you put me around certain people, like I try to mesh myself in a little bit, just not to make people uncomfortable. Yeah? We thought about this, right? Not to make people uncomfortable. So I sit in with them, or I do things, right? Which is true, but dangerous at the same time. I do things such as, well, they gotta hear God too, right? These people who could be a bad influence on me, right? They need to hear God too. And God sent me to do that. Reality is that sometimes I'm just not that strong. That if I place myself in certain areas, then I can fall astray, right? I'm gonna try to be funny. It's funny to me. When I was reading this, yeah, and I'm pretty sure if you know me, you probably is thinking the same thing. When I was reading about what they're supposed to be eating, anybody here was worried about me saying that it's supposed to be vegan? I'm not saying, I'm talking about being vegan, okay? But I was cracking up for myself when I was reading that. I was cracking up more, I'm not sure this, but that was funny, was sometimes people make you food. Sometimes people make you food, and it's supposed to be good food, right? Not have all these bad stuff inside. And you trust them, and you eat this food. Yeah? And I was cracking up laughing, and I told myself, that's it. I'm not listening to her no more. But I trust her. I just had to say that. That was funny. That's the first thing that popped in my brain. I was reading this. Daniel, set me up to not be part of this world over here. But anyway, if you don't know, I'm vegan. Mel makes this food, and she's so gracious to accommodate us few vegan guys out here. But the other vegan, I think she's just struggling, trying to complete the dish. And she had this, it was really good, certain parts. It was a really good chicken thing she made, a mock chicken thing she made. And so we're eating it, and look, is this vegan? Oh yeah, mommy, it's vegan. Oh yeah. We're out there eating it or whatever. And then my sister goes and says, oh, just so you know, Mel, we're going to put real chicken inside. I said, they put real chicken inside. I said, oh, man, I seen gross in there. And we're thinking there. And everybody's laughing. Claudia's butt head. She's like, yes! You ate chicken. But anyways, just a funny story. Sometimes you're even going to watch the good people. But, like I said, so understanding this application is we need to remember how God called us to live. We need to remember the things He called us to do, what we're supposed to look like, because we can get lost in other things, and we cannot, and we will not position ourselves in a way for God to make us fireproof. Like I said, you can take fireproof physically, you can take it spiritually, you can take it in this world. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walked in fire. Right? They walked in this 7 times hotter furnace and were untouched. They didn't even smell like fire. I don't know anybody else. I remember at the men's camp, I was trying to avoid sitting next to the fire, and I was trying to stay away from the wind or make the wind blow the fire away. And I still walked into the house, and I still smelled like smoke. You know. but they're unaffected. We need to live in a way that we're unaffected. Yeah. So it says physically they walked in fire. But think about the situation he said where they were at. They still lived in fire because they weren't from there. Reminder: we walk in fire every single day. Every day, someone tells you to eat something, right? Someone tells you just to a friend's coming over, right? Let's have some beer. Just one. I remember one of my friends was beer was his problem, right? So he, in God's help, God's glory, he was taken away from that struggle. And this is when I first started going to the Lord, and He made it comfortable for me to be outspoken with Him, I guess, yeah. And I opened his icebox one day to grab food for me because you're always allowed in his icebox. And on the bottom of the icebox, I saw beer. I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What is this?" And he said, "That's not mine." I go, "Why is it in your icebox?" It's my friend. My friend comes over, he has a beer. I go, "Why did you keep it?" "Well, because if he comes over a lot, he has beer." I said, like, I would just dump it because I know that's his beer and he bought it. Maybe he should have just took it home because obviously it's a temptation, right? And he said, no. So we went to the living room, we were all talking, and he's not there yet. I go back, and I'm kind of laughing because he's by the sink pouring out on his beer. And but that's how it's supposed to be, right? We're supposed to, we live in a world that is fire. A world that always wants to change us, always wants to affect us, always wants to make us look just like they are. You know? And for some of us, the world might be winning. Yeah? Some of us might not be walking the way we're supposed to walk. Just not making the right decision. Just saying that my kids have my head, taking ministry, teaching, make good decisions. And every time my kids go somewhere, someone always says, "Oh, your daughter's so cute. They keep telling us to make good decisions." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'll make good decisions." But make good decisions when you're out there. Yeah? Like, know how God called you to live. Daniel knew how God called you to live. We need to be bold in doing these things with our brothers and sisters as well. If Daniel wasn't bold, my assumption is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego wouldn't have followed the way he went. It doesn't mention that they stood up and spoke with him and said, "Yeah, we're not doing that." They're quiet. They mention their names as in a sense of because they were also owned by the same master as Daniel was. When Daniel's boldness, they followed, right? And in Daniel's boldness, they followed. And then we go into their story about the fire. And we know our God is our God, right? And He says to do this. And we're not going to listen to you. We refuse to bow down to you. So be bold with your brothers and sisters. I'm not saying to yell at them when they're doing something wrong. But let them know. Also, live your life in a way where they see that this is how the life that God chooses us to live, and whatnot. So, like I said, live application out of this world. So we're talking about fire, right? So I'm still, when I write these things, I'm still stuck on fire changes everything. I'm still stuck like how will it not change by nothing? I understand all the points you're telling me, but the physical concept is still just blowing my brain away. And I started looking in the dictionary, right, or my phone, not the dictionary, my phone, and Googling the definition for fireproof and whatnot. And I found something that was interesting I want to share. And besides fireproof, two other words came up. Fire retardant and fire resistant, right? I'm not going to talk about fire retardant. I'm not going to do it anymore. Fire resistant. The definition I found, it was talking about a building. And I thought that was crazy. Only because when it's talking about a building being fire resistant, I found it crazy because we are the temple. Yeah? We are the church. Yeah? And reading this was crazy for me. So fire resistant, right? The definition was so resistant to fire that for a specified time and under conditions of a standard heat intensity, it will not fail structurally or allow transit of heat and will not permit the side away from the fire to become hotter than a specified temperature. Pretty cool. There's a problem there though. What's the problem? Time. Not fireproof. Yeah? It's fire resistant, means that you resist fire to a point, to a certain temperature, for a certain duration. But eventually that building who's on fire, 7 times hotter than normal, the structure will fall apart eventually, right? The wall that side of the wall that keeps the heat away eventually will fall apart and the heat will transit over. And you can take this and go further with this all you want, right? And it's crazy stuff. You can take it however, I'm not going to do it because I can do it forever. But we can change the words for fireproof, right? Which is the words. So resistant to fire. Sorry, I didn't write it down, sorry. So resistant to fire. Never mind. I don't know. Fireproof, right? That we will be resistant to fire no matter what. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not fire resistant. Yeah, God is not fire resistant. It is not for a short period of time. They were in the fire, a hot fire, walk around the fire. And I just thought that was crazy. You know, like, anybody here get a smartphone? Hopefully everybody has a smartphone, right? Everybody loves their phone. Yeah, I love my phone, right? I love my phone, right? If I just got this cover, and just to be off topic, I like pink. My wife got me this cover. This is a girly pink. So don't judge me. I told her I was mad at her. I said it's supposed to be bright pink, not bubblegum pink. What's wrong with you? But I got it because I needed to protect my phone. I keep without my cover. I keep dropping my phone. I'm surprised my glass didn't crack yet, so I bought a cover and a screen protector and all that other stuff. If I gave you a phone and I told you that this phone is water resistant and this phone is waterproof, which one are you taking? The waterproof, right? Because like you don't want to drop your phone in water and be like, oh, it's water resistant. It doesn't matter. Now if you get sprinkled, oh, okay, it's still freak out. Oh, it's fine, right? But waterproof basically means that it will handle in the water, you know? And yeah, that's stuff. But like I said, so I'm stuck with the fact that fire changes everything. And then God told me something else. This is the last verse. 29 says, therefore I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, and their houses be turned into piles of rubble. For no other God can save in this way. And the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. When I read that, the answer on how we are fireproof, the concept of still being stuck on how can that even be possible, falls back on God again. And God's fire is fireproof. Yeah? No matter what man does, the fire that we live in, we carry God's fire all the time. That's why we fireproof. Yeah? That we live in such a way, right, that you apply that you're not of this world, and you shouldn't look like you're from this world. You shouldn't walk, talk, act, do anything like this world, because that's not you, right? Then your fire is stronger because your fire is God's fire. And God's fire changes everything. There's nothing in this world that God's fire cannot touch and not be changed. Yeah. I don't care if you serve the devil, right? And he does all these great things for you, and he makes you fireproof. You're still not fireproof from God's fire. God's fire touches and changes everything. To the point, right, this king doesn't like them. He's angry that they won't bow down. Throws them in the fire, 7 times hotter than normal. Freaks out that they're not dead. And then at the end, God's fire changes everything. Why? Because he basically bows down to God, right? He says that anybody here who talks smack, about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God will be cut into pieces, right? That they will be punished for they do. God's fire changes everything. I was sitting there and be amazed, like, you know what? Like, that's the way we're supposed to live our life. That when we carry God's fire around, sorry, I think they are in church. When we carry God's fire around, everything changes. We shared in mini church, and I shared it before, the movie Avatar, right? The blue people. Everybody watched that movie? Yeah. My favorite part of the movie, this movie came out, it's probably one of my biggest God movies in the sense of like being struck. Like I never had any movie that really spoke God stuff to me, and this was one of those movies. And this is the part where they're running through the forest, right? And it's nighttime. And what happens? He touches something and it glows, right? He's running through the forest with the girl. Their feet touch the tree, the ground, whatever they're touching glows and changes. And that's the way we live our life. That's the way we should live our life, knowing that we're not of this world, knowing that we carry God's fire, and knowing that God's fire changes everything. Let's see anything else. I think that's basically it, guys. But after this message, I really hope you guys got something from this message. But like I'm excited about this message. I'm excited what God told me about this message. Stuff that I'm not talking about today. Stuff that I just don't want to share because I'm a little sometimes with my own stuff. And it was hard for me not to talk about this at all. And we have our leadership meeting, and like, so we share about our reading and stuff, right? And like I so bad want to share like what I'm feeling, but I know like okay, just be quiet, yeah. We're having our mini church, and it's getting crazy, and I'm like, oh man, I just want to talk about this. Like, oh, it's not. This is not what we're talking about right now. Just save it or whatever. But this is the crazy stuff. Sorry, I see something highlighted in my Bible, so I'm gonna go and see. This is just basically, I think, I highlighted mini church here. So mini church people, if you're listening and remember, hopefully this starts for you. It's talking about chapter 3, verse 18, and it says, but even if he does, not the faithful men knew that God could deliver them, yet they were so aware that God could have chosen not to do so. Faith in God may not translate into victory in every circumstance. To these men, the outcome was irrelevant. For what was at stake was not God's ability or their own lives, but their faith and obedience to serve Him regardless of the cost. See that right now. Right now, I want to share something so bad that I gotta share. But sorry, let me just end this already. So once again, live your life in a way where you glorify God. Live a life in a way where everything is only about God. Don't fall into temptations of the devil. Don't fall into your own lies on I can get out there and do this. That God called me to do this. I'm talking about what if I'm the only person that ever hear talk about God, right? Kind of stuff. Even God came to the sinners that I'm gonna go and chill with my friends. They need to hear God, right? And I might be the only one there, so I'm gonna go and chill with them, knowing they're gonna drink, and I won't have a beer or I won't do this because God's gonna use me to reach them. We need to be very, very careful that if we're not on point, we haven't positioned ourselves in a way that God's fire is on us. Temptation is gonna end up doing something, and a lot of times that can be super dangerous. That being said, that's the end, guys. Live a life that you're fireproof, not fire resistant, and always remember that you're not of this world and live for that world. So, bow your heads and close your eyes.